My name is Agnes Rourke. I am 68 years old, and for 31 years, I worked in the revenue cycle department at Parkview Regional Medical Center in Knoxville, Tennessee. What that means, in plain terms, is that I built insurance claims for a living. Not as a side project, as a discipline. I could scan a 500-line itemized bill, find the one procedure code that didn't align with the attending notes, and catch it before the claim went out the door. In my last 9 years, I managed the team that did the catching. By the time I retired in 2019, I had appealed enough denials to understand one thing about paper that most people never fully learn. A document is only as reliable as the trail you can build behind it. My son Russell came to see me on a Tuesday afternoon in March. He brought a box of lemon cookies from the bakery I like on Cedar Bluff Road. The ones with the thin icing that cracks when you bite it. Set them on my kitchen counter without a word, made us both coffee, and then he placed a manila folder on the table between our cups. He said, "Don't open this until I tell you to." He said it lightly. He had always known how to put a floor under difficult words so they wouldn't drop through. I asked him to explain. He said the folder explained itself, and the timing wasn't right yet, and I would understand when it was. He squeezed my shoulder. He said, "Love you, Mom," and he walked out and drove back to his office building on Magnolia Street. 9 days later, my son was dead. I need to tell you who Russell was before I tell you what came after. He was 46 years old. He had built Thornfield Property Group from a desk in my spare bedroom 12 years earlier, starting with one commercial lease and a belief that Knoxville had more good properties than good managers. By the year he died, Thornfield managed 47 properties across 5 counties and employed 19 people. He had done it with the same method his father Earl used, running his auto shop on Old Kingston Pike in the 90s. Carefully, without overextending, without cutting the kind of corners that look fine until they don't. He married Heather Calloway 8 years ago, a small ceremony out at a cousin's farm in Loudoun County. Heather was organized, focused, and ambitious in ways I recognized because I had been those things too. She loved Russell. I believe that. I also believe that some people love the way they hold a title, with a firm awareness of what it's worth and a clear plan for what happens if they have to let it go. 14 months before he died, Russell had been sitting in an exam room in Nashville when a cardiologist told him his heart muscle was deteriorating in a way that wouldn't reverse itself. Advanced cardiomyopathy. He'd been managing fatigue for 2 years and attributing it to his schedule. The diagnosis put him on a transplant evaluation list and gave him a window. 2 years, possibly 4, depending on how carefully he managed it. He told me in December, 6 months after the diagnosis, sitting at this kitchen table with his coffee going cold. He told Heather the same week, in a separate conversation, and he never told me why he kept those 2 conversations apart. The folder sat in my hall closet for 9 days. On the 10th day, the call came from the paramedics at 11:15 in the morning. Russell had collapsed at his office. His assistant had called 911. By the time the ambulance reached the hospital, it was already over. A cardiac event. They used the word massive, which is the kind of word that lands differently in person than it does on a report. I sat down on the hallway floor, and I stayed there until my daughter Bridget came across town and found me. Heather called me at 3:30 that afternoon. I want to be fair to her in telling you this. Being fair means telling you exactly what happened, without editing it into something easier. She did not say she was sorry. She did not say his name first. The first words out of her mouth were, "Agnes, did Russell give you any paperwork or property documents in the last couple of weeks?" I said, "Heather, Russell is gone." She said, I know that, but I need to know if he signed anything over to you. I just need to know that." There was a man's voice in the background, low, very close to the phone. I recognized the register, if not the words. The sound of a person being told what to say while they are saying it. I told her I didn't know what she was referring to. I said goodbye. I hung up. That was the order of it. My son had been dead for 4 hours. His wife's first call to me was not about grief. I have not been able to rearrange the order of it, no matter how many times I have gone back over it in my mind. I retrieved the folder from the hall closet. In 31 years of billing work, I developed a habit about documents that is not instinct but method. You don't go to the part you're anxious about first. You start at the beginning of the sequence and you read forward. In claims work, skipping a step doesn't just create gaps. It lets you fill the gaps with whatever you want to believe is there. You start at the beginning, or you are deceiving yourself before you even realize it. The folder had 7 items. 1. A recorded quitclaim deed, certified copy, transferring full ownership of the building at 418 Magnolia Street, Knoxville, Knox County, Tennessee, from Russell Allen Rourke to Agnes Jean Rourke. Recorded at the Knox County Register of Deeds on March 4th. Instrument number stamped in the top right corner. 2. A certified statement from First Tennessee Bank for a certificate of deposit, account ending in 300317, with a current balance of $287,000, titled solely in Russell's name. 3. A 1-page letter on firm letterhead from an attorney named Franklin Cross at Cross and Whitmore in downtown Knoxville, dated March 3rd, stating that he had met with Russell that morning, that Russell was fully alert and oriented, was not on any medication affecting his judgment, and had complete legal capacity to execute instruments. 4. 11 pages, signed and notarized, a property agreement executed on Russell's wedding day. It stated in plain language that 418 Magnolia Street had been purchased by Russell prior to the marriage using solely his premarital funds, that it was and would remain his separate property, and that Heather had received independent legal advice before signing. Both signatures were present. The notary block was on page 11. 5. Estate settlement documents from Earl Rourke's estate. 7 years prior. The CD account ending in 3317 had been opened with the proceeds of Earl's life insurance policy, $300,000, paid directly to Russell as the sole named beneficiary, 10 days after Earl's passing. I knew those documents. I had sat at the table with Russell when we organized them because that had been a hard season and he had needed someone steady nearby. 6. 32 months of CD statements. 1 deposit on the day the account opened. Nothing in after that, not from a joint account, not from the business, not from any outside source. 7. A small sealed envelope with 2 words written in Russell's handwriting, open later. I sat at that table until after midnight. I did not open the small envelope. I closed the folder and I put it back in the closet and I tried to sleep. By morning, I understood what I was looking at. My son had been constructing this for at least a year. He had entered his marriage with a property agreement recorded in the public register. He had inherited money, placed it in an account that never touched a joint dollar, and left it there for 7 years. He had transferred the deed quietly and properly with a capacity letter from his attorney, and he had left me a documentation trail that anyone in my field would read the same way. This is not impulsive. This is a record. Every item accounted for. In order. I did not tell anyone, not Bridget, not my pastor, not the neighbors who brought food that week. I spent 3 decades holding other people's private information at work, diagnoses, billing disputes, the claims a patient didn't want their family to know about. You don't do that for 30 years without learning to carry information properly. Not hiding it, just not setting it down in front of whoever's nearest before you understand what you have. Heather came to my house that Saturday with her mother Glenda and a man I hadn't met. Glenda held her purse, in both hands the way a person holds something they are afraid might be taken from them. The man was in his late 40s, gray sport coat, and he introduced himself as Victor Hadley of the Hadley Watts firm out of Nashville. He handed me a letter before he was through my door. The letter used the words fraudulent transfer and elective share and undue influence. It gave me 7 days to execute a deed returning 418 Magnolia Street to the marital estate and to provide documentation of the CD account for inclusion in the probate inventory. Hadley said no one wanted this to go further. He set a pen on my kitchen table next to a one-page acknowledgement form and pointed to a line near the bottom. My eyes went where they have gone for 3 decades, not to the signature line first, to the dates. The letter referenced an appraisal of 418 Magnolia Street as documentation of its value as a marital asset. I asked to see the appraisal report. Hadley said it was referenced in the letter. I said I would like to see the actual report itself. He said it would be available in discovery if we reached that stage. I asked who had ordered the appraisal and when it had been completed. He did not answer that. I set the pen down on the table and said I'd have someone look at the letter. That was all. After Hadley stepped back outside, Glenda stayed. She spoke to me almost gently, which was harder to sit through than the demand letter had been. She told me about the year Heather's father left. Heather was 9 years old. Her husband had moved business assets out of reach 2 months before he filed for divorce, and by the time her attorney tracked it down, there was nothing left to divide. She had walked away from 20 years of marriage with secondhand furniture, and a loan she couldn't pay off for 6 years. She said, "I taught my daughter to protect what's hers. You'd have done the same." And I felt something genuine for her in that moment. I have worked alongside too many women who received nothing from a marriage they gave everything to. Her history was real. Her wound was real. But she was trying to collect that debt from the wrong address. And she had spent 28 years teaching her daughter to do the same. I retained an attorney the following week. Her name was Celeste Meade, and she had a small office on Gay Street in downtown Knoxville. She tried real estate litigation, which requires a particular kind of patience, the tolerance for documentation that other people find tedious. She read through the folder in 20 minutes without speaking, turned back to the property agreement twice, and then set her glasses down on the desk. "This is well prepared," she said. "Here is where it can still go wrong." She laid it out directly, the way I used to explain a complex denial to a department head. No cushioning, just the sequence. Russell was gone and could not testify to anything. Franklin Cross had left his firm 2 years prior, and his case files had been transferred to an associate. Celeste had already called, and the associate couldn't locate the original property agreement. What I had was a copy. In Tennessee, a copy of a document is only as reliable as whoever is vouching for it. A copy produced by the person who benefits from it carries limited weight against a widow's sworn testimony. She needed independent corroboration, something that had existed before this dispute started, untouched by anyone in this family, sitting somewhere neutral. I drove home and thought about where else that property agreement would have appeared. In billing work, when an insurer claims they have no authorization on file, you don't argue with them on the phone. You go to whoever issued the original authorization, the physician's office, the scheduling system, and you request a certified copy with the timestamp. You don't need the insurer to change their position. You need a document that predated the denial and had no reason to exist for the sake of the dispute. I sat at the kitchen table and I thought about that property agreement, and every moment it would have crossed another desk besides Russell's attorney's. And then I remembered. 5 years ago, Russell had refinanced the Magnolia Street building. He had been out of state when the closing was scheduled and had called to ask if I would hold the closing package until he returned. I had said yes. I had kept it in a labeled accordion folder in my home office because that is what 3 decades in records work does to a person. You keep organized copies of things that might matter later. I went to my office. The folder was on the second shelf, behind the tax returns. Inside was the full refinance closing package from Cumberland Title Services. The title commitment was clipped to the front. The document the title company issues before closing, summarizing what they found when they searched the property's ownership history. On page 3, under Schedule B exceptions, there was a reference to a recorded property agreement between Russell Rourke and Heather Calloway Rourke filed on their wedding date in the Knox County Register of Deeds. Instrument number, book number, page number. A recorded public instrument in the register since the day they were married. I have known since my first year at Parkview that the public record is indifferent to your dispute. It was filed 8 years ago by a man who intended for it to be found. It didn't know about any of us, and it didn't care. If this story is making you think about your own documents, your deed, your accounts, the papers you signed at a closing table and filed away somewhere, I hope you will go look at them this week. Leave a comment below and subscribe, because what happened in court is next. I called Celeste that evening. She had the recorded instrument pulled from the Knox County Register the following morning. A certified copy of all 11 pages, the full property agreement, both signatures, the notary block on page 11, Heather's name in her own handwriting, exactly as it had been for 8 years. The cost was $8. I kept the receipt because I always keep the receipt. Celeste also served discovery requests on First Tennessee Bank, account 3317. 32 months of certified statements, 1 deposit on the day the account opened, nothing after. Combined with the estate documents showing the insurance proceeds that had funded it, the account had a complete and unbroken paper history, with no shared money anywhere in it. We filed everything with the court 10 days before the hearing. The night before, I pressed a blouse and did not practice what I would say. I have watched people rehearse testimony, and the rehearsal always shows up, a slight tightness where honest memory should be loose. I read through the file one last time at the kitchen table. Every item in order. Then I turned off the light and went to bed. At 10 o'clock, Heather called. No attorney on the line. I could tell by the way she sounded, unmanaged. She said, "Agnes." And then she was quiet for a moment, and she asked whether Russell had known, toward the end, how serious things were. There was something real in the question. I could hear exactly where it came from. I told her that he had known since December of the year before, that he had handled it the way he handled most hard things. Quietly, without drama, with a plan already in place before he told anyone. She breathed in. Then the steadiness came back into her voice, and she said, "Drop the building claim and release the CD account, and we settle tonight. No court. No more of this." 3 seconds. That was all I got. 3 seconds of my daughter-in-law being a widow instead of a plaintiff. She had heard something true, and she had tried to use it. I said, "Good night, Heather." I set the phone down, and I checked the instrument number on my certified copy one more time. Both matched. I turned off the kitchen light. The courtroom at Knox County Chancery Court had fluorescent lighting and a ventilation hum that you stopped hearing after 10 minutes and then heard again whenever the room went quiet. Chancellor Donna Ferris presided. She had the manner of someone who has received a very large number of explanations that did not hold up and had developed a calibrated patience for it. Victor Hadley opened for Heather. He was good. He laid out Tennessee's equitable distribution framework, that property acquired during a marriage is presumed to be marital, that the burden was on me to prove otherwise by clear and convincing evidence. He said undue influence. He described a widow in a way that was designed to do something in the room, and it did. He submitted his exhibit package. I noticed, and Celeste noticed a moment after, that the appraisal his letter had referenced was not included. When Chancellor Ferris asked, Hadley said, as it was still being finalized. She wrote something down and moved on without comment. Heather testified. She talked about 8 years of marriage and what she had contributed to building a life with Russell, and parts of it were accurate. Then Hadley walked her to the question. Had she, at any point during the marriage, signed an agreement designating the Magnolia Street building as Russell's separate property? She said no. She said she had never signed anything like that. She said she would have remembered signing away a building. She looked at the gallery when she said it, and she sounded certain. I believe she believed what she was saying. Celeste asked her one question on cross. Did she recall signing a stack of documents at a closing table in downtown Knoxville on the day of her marriage? Heather said yes, of course. There had been a lot of paperwork. There was a lot going on that day. It was her wedding. Celeste thanked her and sat down. Then I took the stand. Something settles in me when I am working through a file. It has happened for 30 years. The same forward-only attention that used to come over me during a complex denial appeal, when there was nothing in the room except the sequence of the documentation. It came over me there in that courtroom. Celeste walked me through each item. The quitclaim deed, recorded before Russell's death. Franklin Cross's capacity letter, dated the day before. The CD statements. One deposit, nothing subsequent. The estate documents from Earl's estate showing where that money had originated. The refinance closing package sitting in my accordion folder in my home office for 5 years, because that is what you do when you work in records. Then she handed me the certified copy from the Knox County Register. Mrs. Rourke, what is this document? A certified copy of a recorded instrument. A property agreement signed by Russell Rourke and Heather Calloway Rourke on their wedding day, recorded in the Knox County Register of Deeds. How did you obtain it? From the registrar's office. It's a public record. Anyone can request a certified copy. Chancellor Ferris leaned slightly forward. What did that cost you, Mrs. Rourke? $8, Your Honor. Hadley moved to have the certified copy disregarded as self-serving. Celeste pointed out that a public instrument recorded 8 years prior, predating the dispute by the full length of the marriage, is the definition of independent documentation. Then Chancellor Ferris turned to Hadley directly. His client had testified under oath that she had never signed a property agreement. The court had before it a certified copy of that agreement bearing his client's signature, recorded in the public register since the day of their wedding. How did he reconcile that? He said his client stood by her testimony. Ferris made a note. She did not respond. The ruling came from the bench that afternoon. 418 Magnolia Street was Russell's documented separate premarital property, transferred to me by valid deed before his death. The CD account had been funded entirely from a traceable inheritance, kept separate throughout, and was not subject to equitable distribution. Heather's claim was dismissed. The marital estate she was entitled to administer consisted of what Russell had actually held jointly at the time of his death: a shared brokerage account, 2 vehicles, the furnishings of their home, and a term life insurance policy naming her as the sole beneficiary. It came to just under $800,000. Russell had not left his wife without provision. He had left his separate property to his mother, as he had always had the right to do. Outside the courtroom, Hadley said something to Celeste about appeal options. Celeste told him he was welcome to appeal a recorded public instrument. He did not respond to that, and he left. That evening, I drove past 418 Magnolia on my way home. 2-story brick building, white casement windows, a green painted door. Russell had installed himself the second year he owned it. I had driven past it 100 times over the years without thinking much about it at all. When I got home, I opened the small sealed envelope. 1 page, typed, 3 sentences in his handwriting at the bottom. He did not explain the building or why he had chosen it. He knew, apparently, that I would figure that out, eventually, the same way he had always left things for me to find, rather than telling me directly. A habit he had held on to, since he was old enough to decide how he wanted to deliver difficult things. He wrote, "You spent 31 years building the documentation so other people could sign the front page. Dad always said the real work was done by whoever got there first and stayed the longest. 418 Magnolia is 1 block east of where his shop stood. I bought it because of that. I want your name on it because of that, not for the money. Because some things should go on the record." I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Earl's shop had closed in 1997. I had driven that stretch of Old Kingston Pike 10,000 times since then, and I had never once looked 1 block east at the building on Magnolia and thought, connection. My son had made that map. He had made it on purpose, and he had held it to himself for 12 years, waiting for the moment when handing it over made sense. I called Bridget. She came over. I showed her the letter. She read it twice, and then sat quietly for a while, which is the right response to certain things. I kept the building. I kept the account. I set a portion aside in separate accounts for Russell's 2 children, his son who is 6, his daughter who is 4, in their names only, requiring no signature but their own when they come of age. I had a small brass plate installed on the door frame at 418 Magnolia. It reads, Thornfield, founded by Russell A. Rourke. That was his name, and it belongs on the building he built. My name is on the deed, recorded in the Knox County Register of Deeds, available to anyone who wants a certified copy for $8. I sent Heather a short letter that October. I told her I was sorry for her loss because I was. I told her the door between us was closed because it was. I told her I hoped she would stop letting other people write the script for her grief, that I had watched what another person's old wound can make you do, and it is not the same as protecting yourself. It is just collecting the wrong debt from the wrong door. She did not write back. I had not expected her to. 31 years of building cases for other people's claims, of catching the code that didn't match, documenting the exception, filing the appeal, doing the work that allowed someone else's name to appear on the final decision. You do that long enough, and you stop noticing what you gave away along the way. You think it is simply the job. Russell noticed. He had been noticing since before I retired, and when the time came, he did what he had always done. Quietly, with a plan, without any drama about it. He built the record first, then he handed me the deed. There are mornings now when I unlock that green door on Magnolia Street and I stand in the entry for a moment before I go up the stairs, 1 block east of where Earl ran his shop for 22 years. The shop is gone. A tire place is there now, but the corner is the same corner it always was. Russell found the block just past it. He put a green door on a brick building. He put his name on the work, and then he put my name on the deed. And some mornings when I turn that key, I think that is exactly what he meant. Not a date circled on a calendar. Not a dollar amount in an account. Just a woman standing in a doorway that is hers, with a key that works, and a name in the public register that no one had to fight to find. Because her son made sure every link of it was there, long before anyone thought to look.